The 60s, the golden age of commercial aviation, with luxurious cabins, the best catering, and young flight attendants smiling with joy. A time when flying was a luxury that only the richest could afford. A transatlantic flight could cost 10 times more of what it does now. In addition, and with the introduction of turbojets, flights were more comfortable and faster than ever. The new jet airliners, which many traditional airlines, such as Pan Am, did not hesitate to add to their fleet, brought quieter cabins and less vibrations. Soon after, airlines will also introduce supersonic flights, connecting London and New York in just 3 hours. And the truth is that at that time, flying was not only luxurious, but also fast, and in fact, faster than it is today. In the 1950s, with the arrival of turbojets, air travel was undergoing a revolution, replacing old and outdated piston engines. Jets were not only quieter, but also flew higher and faster. With a much simpler design, they ended the uncomfortable noise and vibrations that pistons produce. Furthermore, they had the ability to fly much higher. A traditional aircraft, like the DC-4, used to cruise between 10,000 and 20,000 feet. By contrast, the de Havilland Comet, the world's first commercial jet, maintained a cruising altitude of 40,000 feet, dodging storms and turbulence that it encountered on its way. As the technology in turbojets improved, airplanes also began to fly faster, almost reaching the sound barrier. Aircraft that fly very high, like commercial airliners, measure speed very differently than we are used to. While it is true that they sometimes measure speed in miles per hour or knots, it is more common to express their speed in relation to the speed of sound. This is called the Mach number, and it is simply the ratio of the speed of an object and the speed of sound of the fluid in which it travels, in this case, air. Depending on the value of the Mach number, we can find 4 different regions: the subsonic, the transonic, the supersonic, and the hypersonic region. How air behaves highly depends on the region in which the plane is flying. The Boeing 727, the Lockheed TriStar, and the Convair Coronado soar the skies at nearly sonic speeds, reaching Mach numbers of 0.9. However, flying that fast also had its price. As we get closer to the sound barrier, air begins to behave very differently, creating shock waves which we can even observe from the plane, and which drastically increase aerodynamic drag. This graph shows the change in drag relative to the Mach number. For values close to Mach 0.9, a small increase in speed results in a huge increase in drag, which means that to travel a little bit faster, a lot more thrust is needed, and therefore much more fuel. However, once you cross the sound barrier, drag begins to decrease. Supersonic aircraft, such as the Concorde, flew at speeds of Mach 2.2, taking advantage of that reduction in drag. This was not a problem during the 1960s, when oil was cheap and abundant, but everything changed during the 1973 oil crisis. Airlines, which were in a very delicate situation, began to look for ways to reduce costs. One of them was to just fly slower. Later, in 1978, the United States also passed the Airline Deregulation Act, removing government control over ticket prices, which introduced a free market in commercial air travel. This caused a huge increase in flights and also decreased the price of plane tickets. Once again, airlines and aircraft manufacturers look for ways to cut costs to attract more travelers, whose demand was more sensitive to ticket prices than to the duration of flights. Little by little, turbojets, which were not very profitable and also produced trails of black smoke, were replaced by turbofans, much more efficient and ecological. Turbofans, unlike turbojets, produce most of the thrust by spinning a giant fan at the front of the engine. Their operation is very similar to that of a conventional jet engine, but in turbofans, the airflow is divided into 2 parts. One travels through the engine core, or primary flow, where it mixes with fuel, and the other bypasses the entire core. The latter is also called bypass flow, and it produces most of the thrust. The bypass ratio of a turbofan is the ratio of the bypass mass flow rate to the core's mass flow rate. In civil aircraft, it is important to keep high bypass ratios, since they reduce noise, pollution, fuel consumption, and also increase performance. However, while turbojets are capable of operating close to the sound barrier, turbofans are inefficient at those speeds and have lower operating speeds, around Mach 0.84. Today, the Boeing 787 and the Airbus A350 fly slower than the old Boeing 727, but they have huge turbofans that consume much less fuel, with bypass ratios of 10:1. With the development and improvement of turbofan engines and other technologies, airlines have been able to reduce the cost of plane tickets, making them affordable to the majority of the population. It is true that flying is no longer as luxurious or elegant as it once was, but those times are over. Today, we fly slower than before, but cheaper than ever.